Ukraine was invaded, so why is he the villain? One thing that sort of irks me of late is the demonization of Zelensky, the current leader of Ukraine. Now, one of the points that is often brought up is that he is essentially a dictator, functionally speaking. This is dishonest, and a comparison between him and Churchill was made by Piers Morgan, who said that Churchill still allowed elections despite the Axis bombing London. That is true. However, Britain was never invaded. That is something to take into account. Furthermore, the land of Switzerland, known for her direct democracy and prizing of civil liberties, was during that time ruled by, you could argue, a dictator. His name, Henri Guisan. He, the general of the Swiss armed forces, essentially ruled with an iron fist in many ways. He suspended, for example, civil liberties, including any sort of footage or whatever of himself. Why was this? Because despite the Swiss championing of civil liberties, the reality is that they were wedged between two empires, Italy and Germany, that sought to invade them. So that is a reality. And to say that Zelensky is a dictator without providing the context of a literal invasion is dishonest. The fact of the matter is that one man started this war. His name is Vladimir Putin, a man whom I personally believe to be on the autism spectrum. That's number one, not to demonize anyone. And number two, I believe perhaps could be some sort of psychopath, although perhaps it could also be a case of the emperor wears no clothes, meaning that a lot of what has happened on the ground he may not be aware of due to the insulation that the emperor usually has, for those of you that are familiar with the story. And the other problem here that sort of is getting at me, sort of irks me, is the demonization of Zelensky as ungrateful when he had his encounter with Donald Trump. He was being asked to give up half of his country in exchange for a peace deal that had no security guarantees. Think about that for a second. No man on earth would ever agree to that. No one would agree to it. Donald Trump would not agree to it. Donald Trump would not agree to give up half of a state within the US for the sake of peace, and especially in the absence of some sort of security guarantee. That's number one. People value their territory. They are not willing to give it up very easily. That's one point. And that was what was so dehumanizing about the treatment of Zelensky. Another thing is the right-wing demonization of him as somehow benefiting from the war, wanting this war, and so on and so forth. No, that's not to say there aren't necessarily legitimate criticisms and concerns when it comes to his government and so on and so forth. That is absolutely true. However, we keep forgetting that the true sort of villain within the story is Vladimir Putin. The Russian government has proven that they don't even care about the lives of those under them. They are tricking Africans and people from other places in the world into coming and working for them, only for those people to find themselves on the front lines of Ukraine. They are willing to engage in meat-grinding tactics at the cost of their own people. This is a terrible, terrible thing. And furthermore, the failure of Russia, quite frankly, in Ukraine demonstrates something. People such as Joe Heschmeyer have been talking about, Mearsheimer, have been talking about how perhaps Russia is a paper tiger. Well, I would go further and perhaps more poetic. I would describe Russia as the rotting corpse of a dead empire that died in 1990 and has been in denial ever since.